crimson sun, a bloated, dying star, bled across a sky choked with ash and the skeletal remains of orbital defense platforms. Below, the city of Kaltos, once a jewel of imperial industry, was a ruin. Smoke billowed from shattered manufactorums, and the screams of the dying, carried on the wind, were a constant, harrowing chorus. Among the rubble, a figure moved. He was a silhouette against the infernal glow, a shadow of an earlier, more civilized age. His armor was not the crude ceramite of the Imperium, nor the rusted iron of its enemies. It was a suit of midnight grey, built for stealth and brutal efficiency, a design utterly alien to this brutal galaxy. The cowl, pointed like bat ears, only added to his mystique. This was the Batman, or what remained of him. Not the caped crusader of old Gotham, but something forged anew in a crucible of cosmic horror. Absolute Batman. He knelt beside a young Kaltian, a girl no older than 10, her face streaked with tears and grime. A crude Imperial Guard laser gun, too heavy for her, lay uselessly beside her small hand. Around them, the sounds of battle intensified. Bolt of fire, the guttural roars of mutated beasts, the thudding steps of something immense. She clutched a dirty, worn data slate, its screen flickering with faint, almost dead energy. "They're coming," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the distant cacophony. The demons." Batman didn't answer immediately. His cowl's optical sensors, custom calibrated for the 41st millennium's unique horrors, scanned the data slate. A schematic, crude but precise, of the city's underlevels, a series of reinforced bunkers deep beneath the Imperial Administratum spire. He'd studied it for days, piecing together the fragmented information. It was the last hope, the final redoubt. And it was collapsing. Are there others? His voice was a low growl, processed through his suit's vocoder, a sound that cut through the girl's terror with an edge of absolute command. It wasn't human, not anymore. It was a promise of swift, inevitable action. The girl, Ilara, flinched but nodded. My family, they went to Bunker Zeta 7. The Administratum had a shuttle. Before the warp storms broke. Her voice trailed off, a fresh wave of despair washing over her. Batman didn't offer comfort. He offered a path. "Show me the fastest route. Every second counts." His gauntleted hand, scarred and hardened by countless battles against unimaginable foes, rested on her shoulder. The touch was firm, not gentle, a command, not a plea. Ilara, despite her terror, felt an echo of something she hadn't known in weeks. Purpose. She pointed a trembling finger at the data slate. The air within the ruined Administratum complex tasted of dust, fear, and something else. A coppery tang that spoke of fresh blood. The structure, once imposing, was now a skeletal remains, its plasteel skin ripped open, revealing twisted rebar and shattered ceramite. Batman moved through it like a ghost, his form barely registering in the low light. Ilara, surprisingly agile, kept pace, her small frame darting behind him, eyes wide with a mixture of terror and fierce awe. They passed through a collapsed atrium, where a mural depicting the Emperor's divine glory lay cracked and defaced, splattered with ichor. Ilara let out a small gasp. Batman paused, his sensors picking up movement. Not the lumbering, mindless kind. This was calculated. "Stay behind me," he ordered, his voice barely a whisper. He drew a weapon from his utility belt. Not a batarang, but a modified pulse cannon, scavenged from a fallen Eldar ranger and re-engineered with human and Xenos tech. Its silent hum was the only sound. A hulking figure rounded the corner, its skin a sickening purple, muscles bulging, 3 clawed arms ending in razor-sharp talons. A demonette of Slanesh, its head, crowned with a topknot of bone and hair, tilted, sniffing the air. A high-pitched, mocking giggle echoed through the ruins. "Little morsels," it hissed, its voice a symphony of depraved pleasure. "Come to play." Before the daemonette could complete its sentence, Batman fired. The pulse cannon, usually a precise instrument of surgical strikes, unleashed a concentrated blast of pure kinetic energy. The demonette shrieked, a sound of unholy agony, as its chest exploded in a spray of iridescent gore. It crumpled, twitching, then dissolved into a cloud of pink dust and the sweet, sick smell of warp stuff. Ilara gagged, covering her mouth. Batman ignored the dissolving corpse. His sensors were already pinpointing more signatures. Multiple. Faster. He turned, pulling out a pair of flashbang grenades, not the inert stunners of his past, but devices calibrated to overload warp-spawned sensors. Down! He barked at Alara, pushing her behind a shattered plinth just as he hurled the grenades. They detonated with a blinding flash and an ear-splitting shriek of high-frequency energy. More daemonettes, their elegant, horrifying forms now distorted by the blast, stumbled into the open, their senses overwhelmed. Batman didn't hesitate. He was a storm of precise, brutal movements. He lunged, his gauntleted fists, reinforced with adamantium and powered by his suit's internal micro-servos, striking with the force of a battering ram. One daemonette's head snapped back, its neck breaking with a wet crunch. Another met a knee to its midsection, sending it flying into a crumbling wall where it collapsed, a heap of broken limbs. He didn't waste a single movement, didn't spare a single thought for morality. This was a war of attrition, and he was the ultimate weapon. He moved through the remaining demonettes with a frightening efficiency, each strike designed to incapacitate or kill. His combat analysis AI, integrated into his brain through direct neural interface, calculated trajectories, weaknesses, and optimal strike points faster than any living mind. He wasn't just fighting, he was an engine of destruction, fueled by data and an absolute, unyielding will. Within a minute, the atrium was littered with dissolving corpses and the lingering, acrid smell of the warp. Batman stood amidst the carnage, his chest plate rising and falling rhythmically, his cowl fixed forward. He turned to Alara, who was slowly emerging from behind the plinth, her eyes wide with a mixture of horror and awe. "The way is clear," he stated, his voice devoid of emotion. "Keep moving!" Alara nodded, unable to speak. Her previous terror now mingled with a growing, profound understanding of the terrible power that walked beside her. The Batman was not a man. He was a force, a terrible, wonderful, utterly alien force in this galaxy of gods and monsters. They descended into the underlevels. The air grew colder, heavier, filled with the metallic tang of old machinery and stale recycled air. Batman's internal chronometer ticked. Time was running out. The warp storm had grown in intensity, its psychic tremors threatening to tear reality apart. He knew the demon hordes would only multiply, seeking out the last pockets of resistance. Suddenly, a distant explosion rumbled through the floor beneath their feet, sending dust showering from the low ceiling. Alara cried out, stumbling. Batman caught her, his grip firm. "What was that?" she whispered, fear returning to her eyes. "Compromised," Batman stated, his voice a low growl. "Bunker Zeta 7. His internal diagnostics flashed, showing structural integrity readings plummeting. The Imperium's emergency defenses, designed for orbital bombardment, were failing against warp incursions. He picked up his pace, pushing deeper into the labyrinthine tunnels. These were service conduits, maintenance shafts, and forgotten passages, routes only a local like Alara or a master of infiltration like himself would know. He moved with a practiced fluidity, his heavy armor making no sound, his custom boots dampening every step. "We need to find an access point," he explained, his voice flat, devoid of panic. "One they haven't found yet." He scanned the crumbling walls, his optical sensors highlighting stressed points, hidden hatches, and ancient structural weak spots. His internal mapping system, fed by Alara's data slate and his own rapid scans, began constructing a three-dimensional model of the crumbling undercity. "There," Alara pointed, her small finger tracing a faint line on the data slate's dim screen. "A service tunnel. It leads to the lower generatorium. My father said it's rarely used, even by the guard," Batman acknowledged with a nod. He approached a thick plasteel wall, its surface scarred by centuries of neglect. His gauntlet extended, a multi-tool integrated into the design whirring to life. Tiny sonic emitters targeted specific points on the wall, creating hairline fractures. A pulse of concentrated force, and a section of the plasteel panel popped inwards, revealing a dark, narrow passage beyond. He entered first, his custom headlamp slicing through the gloom. The tunnel was barely wide enough for him, a tight squeeze even for his compact armored form. Alara followed, her small size an advantage here. The air was thick with the smell of ozone and old machine oil. As they moved, the rumbling grew more constant, more violent. The very ground seemed to shiver. Batman's internal readouts indicated the core of Bunker Zeta 7 was under direct assault. He adjusted his pace, pushing the limits of speed while maintaining absolute situational awareness. Every shadow, every creak, Every distant shriek was catalogued, analyzed, and filed. They emerged into a vast, cavernous space. It was the lower generatorium, a sprawling network of ancient plasma conduits and humming power cells, now mostly dark. Emergency lights, flickering red, cast long, dancing shadows. And then he saw them. They weren't demonettes. These were larger, more grotesque, bloated, pus-filled monstrosities. Their skin a diseased green, their single cyclopean eyes glowing with malevolent intelligence. Nurglings, small but numerous, swarmed around their feet. And at the center, a hulking, horned creature, its massive gut distended, a rusty axe dripping with foul ichor clutched in one hand, a great unclean one, a demon prince of Nurgle. The sight alone was enough to break lesser men. Batman, however, merely registered it as an obstacle, a severe, immediate obstacle. The great unclean one, its voice a gurgling, phlegmy roar, turned its diseased head towards them. "More fresh meat for Grandfather Nurgle," it bellowed, its single eye fixed on Ilara. "And what is this dark thing? A shadow come to die?" Batman pushed Ilara behind a console, shielding her with his body. He wasn't here to fight a demon prince. He was here to buy time, to create a diversion. He surveyed the generatorium, his mind racing. Plasma conduits, high-energy cells, a massive, aging power core humming with barely contained energy. A plan, audacious and suicidal, formed in his mind. "They're after the power core," Ilara whispered, her voice trembling. "They want to corrupt it, spread the plague." Batman nodded. "I know." He drew a device from his belt, a modified EMP projector, originally designed to disable complex security systems, now repurposed for something far more drastic. "Get to the main service tunnel exit. It leads to the surface. Wait for my signal." Ilara looked up at him, her eyes wide with unasked questions. "But you?" "I'll buy you time," he stated, his voice as unyielding as the ceramite of his suit. He wasn't asking, he was commanding. "Now go." The great unclean one began to lumber forward, its nurglings swarming ahead like a tide of pestilence. Batman stood his ground, a lone dark sentinel against a wave of cosmic horror. His targeting reticle locked onto the main plasma conduit. His internal AI confirmed the plan: overload the conduit, trigger a cascade failure in the ancient power core, and collapse the entire generatorium. It would buy Ilara minutes, maybe an hour, but it would also bury him. He activated the EMP projector, a low hum emanating from the device. The great unclean one roared, picking up its pace. This was it, the ultimate sacrifice. The last stand. The generatorium erupted. The EMP pulse, precisely timed, overloaded the plasma conduits, causing them to rupture in a series of violent explosions. The ancient power core, already unstable, began to shudder, its containment fields failing. The great unclean one roared in fury, its diseased form momentarily illuminated by the destructive cascade, before being enveloped in a storm of fire and shrapnel. Batman didn't see the full extent of the destruction. He was already moving, sprinting towards the service tunnel exit Ilara had pointed out. He knew the odds. Even for him, a direct hit from a collapsing plasma core was likely terminal. But he had bought Ilara time. That was the mission. He ran, the ground beneath his feet bucking and tearing apart. The air filled with superheated steam, pulverized rock, and the dying shrieks of nurglings. He pushed his suit's systems to their absolute limits, the artificial muscles screaming under the strain. He was a dark blur, a single point of defiance in a maelstrom of entropy. He reached the access tunnel, the heavy blast door already half shattered by the initial explosions. He threw himself through the gap, the tunnel collapsing behind him, sealing off the inferno. He stumbled, his suit sparking, internal alarms blaring. He had made it. He lay there for a moment, catching his breath, his powerful heart hammering against his ribs. The air, though thick with dust, was cooler here, no longer superheated by plasma. He pushed himself up, his muscles aching, his suit diagnostics showing critical damage, but functional. He had survived. Against impossible odds, he had survived. Then, through the dust and the fading echoes of the explosions, he heard it. A low, guttural growl, not from within the collapsed generatorium. From outside the tunnel, he turned, his optical sensors focusing. The service tunnel opened into a wider secondary access shaft, a massive, cavernous space that led to the surface. And blocking his path, framed against the faint, sickly orange light filtering down from the ravaged sky, stood a new threat. It was immense, far larger than the great unclean one. A creature of living shadow and bone, its form shifting and coalescing as he watched. Its eyes, twin points of malevolent crimson light, fixed on him. Its voice, when it spoke, resonated not through the air, but directly into his mind, a cold alien whisper that spoke of endless hunger and ancient malice. A tempting morsel, it hissed, its massive clawed hand slowly reaching out. So much despair, so much potential. Batman stared back, his expression hidden by the cowl. He recognized the being from the Imperium's terrified whispers, from the forbidden grimoires he'd painstakingly deciphered. A demon prince, yes, but of a different, more insidious lineage. A demon prince of Tzeentch, and it was waiting for him. He was trapped. Behind him, a collapsing ruin. Before him, an enemy far beyond his current capabilities, an entity of pure chaos that could twist reality with a thought. His suit was damaged. His EMP weapon was spent. Alara was still waiting. He knew what he had to do. He activated his grapple gun, targeting a broken support beam high above. He wouldn't run. He wouldn't yield. He would fight. Alara waited at the surface access point, shivering, not just from the cold, but from the lingering terror and the immense, ground-shaking explosions that had rocked the city from below. She clutched the data slate, its screen now completely dead, to her chest. She had followed Batman's command, reaching the designated rendezvous point, a crumbled plaza overlooking the shattered remains of Kaltos. But he hadn't come, not yet. Above, the sky churned, a maelstrom of toxic clouds and the sickly green glow of the warp. The ground rumbled again, a different kind of tremor, deeper, more guttural. She heard shouts, distant gunshots, and then a chilling, triumphant roar that seemed to tear at the very fabric of the air. She peered through the gaps in the rubble, her small body trembling. The plaza was empty, too empty. A chill snaked down her spine. The roar sounded again, closer this time, and then she heard a heavy, dragging sound, like something immense being pulled across the shattered concrete. Then she saw it, a grotesque, multi-limbed creature, its skin shimmering with an unnatural light, its eyes burning with an infernal glow. It was dragging something dark, something familiar. It was the Batman, or what remained of him. His armor was dented, scored, and ripped in places, sparking with dying energy. One of his gauntlets was torn, revealing a glimpse of the powerful synthetic muscles beneath. The creature, a lord of change, a greater demon of Tzeentch, held him aloft, not by a single limb, but with a casual grasp that spoke of immense power. Batman was limp, unconscious, or worse. The Lord of Change paused, its head tilted, its massive bird-like beak opening in a soundless laugh that echoed in Ilara's mind. It raised Batman higher, displaying him like a trophy. "See, little one." The demon prince's voice resonated in her skull, cold and mocking. "Your Shadow Knight is but a plaything, a broken toy." Ilara's breath hitched. Fear, cold and absolute, gripped her heart. But beneath it, a spark ignited, a fierce, desperate anger. Batman had saved her. He had sacrificed himself. She wouldn't let him be a trophy. Not while she still breathed. She scrambled back, her eyes darting around, searching for anything at all. Her gaze fell upon a discarded Imperial Guard flak jacket, ripped and bloodstained. Beside it, a single abandoned frag grenade. Its pin was still in. Her hands trembled as she reached for it, her small fingers struggling with the cold metal. The Lord of Change took another step, dragging Batman closer. Ilara knew she had only one chance. She had to act. Now she pulled the pin. The click was impossibly loud in the silence. The Lord of Change stopped, its head snapping towards her, its crimson eyes narrowing. It had seen her. Ilara didn't hesitate. With a primal scream, a sound of pure defiance born from the depths of her terror, she hurled the grenade with all her strength. It was a pathetic throw, wobbling through the air, but it was aimed. It was defiance. It was hope. The grenade spun, landing not at the feet of the Lord of Change, but surprisingly, directly at the feet of the unconscious Batman. For a split second, Ilara felt a surge of despair. She had failed. She had condemned him. Then a flicker, a barely perceptible movement. Batman's hand, the torn gauntlet, twitched. His fingers, even in unconsciousness, reached. They closed around the grenade, not to throw it, but to crush it. A strange, humming energy emanated from his suit. The grenade, instead of detonating, pulsed with a sickly green light, then shimmered and vanished. phased out of existence. Batman's optical sensors, which had been dark, flickered. A single crimson glow, then another. His cowl ears twitched. He wasn't unconscious. He had been waiting, analyzing, and now he was awake. The Lord of Change recoiled, a soundless snarl echoing in Ilara's mind. Impossible! Batman's head snapped up, his eyes, now twin points of burning crimson, locked onto the demon prince. He was still in the demon's grasp, but his body was no longer limp. It was tense, coiled, radiating a dark, almost palpable energy. Fool, Batman's voice, raspy but laced with a terrible, renewed strength, cut through the air. You underestimated me. You underestimated humanity. His hand, the one that had just phased the grenade, now shot forward, gripping the demon prince's wrist. The Lord of Change shrieked, a sound of genuine pain and shock. The part of Batman's suit that touched the demon's flesh began to glow, a sickly green light emanating from the contact point. The Lord of Change, in an act of pure desperation, flung Batman away, sending him skidding across the plaza. Batman landed, his suit heavily damaged, but he was on his feet in an instant, his cape fluttering behind him like the wings of a predatory beast. He stood between Ilara and the demon prince, a battered, defiant silhouette against the burning sky. The Lord of Change, its massive form now visibly singed at the wrist, its elegant feathers ruffled, stared at him with a mixture of hatred and grudging respect. "What are you?" it hissed, its voice now devoid of its previous mocking tone. Batman didn't answer with words. He reached for his utility belt. His hand closed around something new, something that hadn't been there before, something impossible. A small, dark projectile, its surface rippling with an unsettling, almost warp-like energy. He had analyzed the warp-spawned grenade, reverse-engineered its energy signature in milliseconds, and used his suit's advanced molecular forges to replicate a countermeasure. Not just a weapon, but a weapon against chaos itself. A bolt of anti-warp energy, crafted in the heart of the storm. He hurled it. The projectile flew true, a dark streak against the fiery sky. It struck the Lord of Change square in the chest. There was no explosion, no blast. Instead, the demon prince screamed, a sound of pure, unadulterated agony that tore at Ilara's very soul. Its form began to shimmer, to distort, not dissolving into dust, but twisting, reforming, unraveling. The very essence of its being was being torn apart. The Lord of Change thrashed, its powerful limbs flailing, but the dark energy continued to consume it, pulling it back into the chaotic realm from whence it came, but not as it was. It was being unmade. Batman stood his ground, watching the impossible unfold. His internal diagnostics were blaring. His suit was at 20% power. He was wounded, exhausted, but he had won, for now. The demon prince of Tsench, one of the mightiest beings of chaos, shrieked one last, agonizing roar as its form twisted into a vortex of swirling colors and raw warp energy, then vanished, leaving behind only the lingering stench of ozone and raw terror. Ilara stared, her mouth agape. Batman had done it. He had defeated a demon prince, a godlike being. He had truly earned his title, Absolute Batman. But the battle was far from over. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the distant sounds of battle from other parts of the city. Batman turned to Ilara, his crimson eyes scanning her quickly. "Are you injured?" She shook her head, still in shock. "No, I'm fine," he nodded, a grim set to his jaw. "Good, we need to move. More will come." As if on cue, a new tremor ran through the ground. This one was different, heavier, more deliberate. The sky above them, already a canvas of despair, began to swirl with a new, darker energy. From the shattered remains of the Administratum spire, a colossal shadow rose. It was a massive, chitinous beast, covered in armor plating and bristling with weapons. It was a Chaos Knight, a towering war machine, its demonic pilot fused to its corrupted metal shell, its single glowing red eye fixed on them. Its voice, a distorted roar of static and fury, echoed across the plaza. For the War Master, for Chaos Undivided. Batman looked at the monstrous war machine, then at Ilara. He was alone. His suit was broken. He had just faced down a demon prince. Now this. His resolve, however, was unbroken. He raised his last functioning gauntlet, a defiant gesture. "Stay behind me," he ordered, his voice still a low, unwavering growl. "I'll handle this." Ilara, now more terrified than she had ever been, could only nod, a single tear tracking a clean path through the grime on her cheek. The city around them was dying, the galaxy was burning, and Batman, a broken god in a broken land, stood ready for the next impossible fight. The Chaos Knight advanced, its colossal strides shaking the very foundations of the ruined plaza. Each step was a death knell, echoing the final moments of a dying world, its single glowing red eye, a malevolent lamp in the gathering gloom, fixed on Batman, a tiny, defiant silhouette against the infernal sky. Its roar, a blend of static and demonic fury, ripped through the air, promising annihilation. Batman stood his ground, battered but unbroken. His suit, a patchwork of sparking circuits and dented ceramite, was a testament to his tenacity. His internal diagnostics shrieked a litany of failures: power at 18%, structural integrity compromised, weapons systems flickering. But his will, forged in the fires of 1,000 dimensions, remained absolute. "Stay behind me, Alara," he repeated, his voice a low growl, devoid of any hint of fear. The girl, tears still streaking her face, nodded, huddling behind a shattered plinth. She watched, a silent witness, as the broken god prepared to face the monster. The Chaos Knight lifted its left arm, which ended in a massive, battle-scarred thermal cannon. The weapon hummed to life, a deep, resonant thrum that vibrated in Alara's chest. A searing beam of superheated plasma erupted, streaking towards Batman. Batman didn't dodge. He couldn't. His suit's mobility was too compromised. Instead, he raised his remaining functional gauntlet, a desperate, impossible gamble. From its surface, a faint, almost invisible energy shield flickered into existence, a testament to the suit's last, dying functions. The plasma beam struck the shield with a deafening crack, pushing Batman back several feet, his boots carving furrows in the ruined concrete. The shield held for a fraction of a second, then shattered, throwing sparks and debris. The Chaos Knight paused, its demonic pilot clearly surprised. Such a small thing should have been vaporized. Batman used the brief respite. His gauntlet, now visibly smoking, ejected a series of small dark pellets. They weren't frag grenades. They were sonic disruptors, repurposed from Xenos tech, designed to target the resonant frequencies of warp-infused constructs. They arced through the air, striking the knight's legs and chest armor. The effect wasn't an explosion, but a sickening, grinding shriek. The knight's corrupted plating vibrated violently, a wave of distorted sound washing over the plaza. The demon within shrieked, a high-pitched whine that warred with the static of the knight's voxcasters. The war machine stumbled, its massive form momentarily thrown off balance. This was Batman's chance. He activated his grapple gun, the last of his suit's intact systems. The grapple line shot out, a thin, impossible tether, sinking its claws into a crumbling buttress of the administratum spire, high above the knight. With a grunt of effort, Batman launched himself upwards, a dark projectile against the toxic sky. The knight recovered, its thermal cannon sweeping the ground where Batman had stood. Seeing its target airborne, it adjusted, its other arm, a massive chainsword, roaring to life. The adamantium teeth spun, a blur of deadly steel. Batman swung, a human pendulum building momentum. He knew he couldn't fight this machine head-on. Not like this. He needed an opening. He needed a weakness. He needed to be smarter. He landed high on the knight's back, a daring, suicidal move. The chainsword thrashed wildly, trying to dislodge him, but Batman held on, his magnetic boots locking onto the knight's carapace. He moved like a spider, scaling the towering machine, heading for the cockpit, for the diamond pilot within. The knight roared, bucking and twisting, trying to shake him off. Alara watched, her heart in her throat, as Batman became a blur of motion, avoiding crushing blows and rending claws. He reached the knight's head, its single glowing eye now directly below him. His gauntlet, despite the damage, still housed a few depleted tools. He tore at the heavy armor plating around the cockpit, exposing layers of warped metal and pulsing demon-infused flesh. He could hear the pilot screaming inside, a cacophony of human and demon agony. The knight, in a desperate attempt, slammed itself against the remaining wall of the administratum spire. Batman was thrown against the armored plating, sparks flying, his suit groaning under the impact. His grip faltered. He was falling. He instinctively activated his cape, now tattered and singed, using its remaining aerodynamics to slow his descent, spiraling down the knight's side. He landed hard on one of the knight's shoulders, his body screaming in protest. The knight's thermal cannon swiveled, aiming directly at him. There was no escape. Then, Elara acted. She had been watching, terrified, but also learning. Batman's defiance, his impossible will, had sparked something in her. She remembered his words. Every second counts. She remembered how he used the environment, how he found weaknesses. Her eyes scanned the plaza. The ground was littered with debris, but also with discarded Imperial equipment. A broken-down Sentinel Scout Walker lay on its side, its multi-laser cannon half buried in rubble. It was useless, inert, but its fuel cell, with a surge of desperate energy, Elara scrambled towards the Sentinel. Her small hands, surprisingly strong with adrenaline, wrestled with the heavy fuel cell, partially exposed by the damage. It was heavy, far too heavy, but she dragged it, inch by agonizing inch, towards the Chaos Knight. The Knight fired its thermal cannon. Batman, seeing the impossible trajectory, rolled, a millisecond escape from certain death. The plasma blast scorched the air where he had been. He looked up, expecting the next shot, but saw Elara. "Elara, get back!" he roared, his voice cracking through the Vox filter. But she didn't stop. With a primal scream of her own, a mirror of her earlier defiance, she hurled the heavy fuel cell with all her might. It bounced off the knight's leg armor with a dull clang, then rolled, coming to rest precariously close to the knight's foot, near an exposed joint. The knight roared in frustration, stomping its massive foot. It intended to crush the fuel cell, to crush the insignificant human, but as its foot descended, Batman, now understanding Elara's desperate plan, made his move. He launched himself from the knight's shoulder, a controlled freefall. He landed on the knight's lower leg, precisely where the fuel cell lay. With a single, brutal kick, he sent the fuel cell flying, not away from the knight, but into the exposed joint, wedging it deep within the machinery. "Now!" he bellowed. The Chaos Knight, enraged, began to stomp its foot again, trying to dislodge him, trying to crush the fuel cell. The stress on the weakened joint was immense. Batman, with a final surge of power, punched the fuel cell, not with his fist, but with a micro-EMP pulse from his damaged gauntlet, the last sputtering gasp of his advanced tech. The Imperial fuel cell, already compromised, ruptured. It didn't explode with a grand fiery blast, but with a concussive shockwave that tore through the knight's leg. The joint screamed in protest, twisted metal ripping apart. The knight's balance was gone. The colossal war machine lurched, a sound of grinding metal and demonic agony filling the air. It tottered, its chainsword arm flailing wildly as it tried to regain its footing. Batman, thrown clear by the tremor, landed hard on the plaza floor, his suit sparking violently, his vision blurring. The Chaos Knight swayed, then toppled. It fell with a deafening crash, a mountain of corrupted steel and demon flesh slamming into the ruined plaza. The impact sent a shockwave through the ground, shattering more buildings, sending debris flying in all directions. The air filled with dust, the smell of ozone, and the dying, agonized shrieks of the demon within. Elara had instinctively ducked behind the plinth again, covering her head. When the rumbling subsided, she looked up. The Chaos Knight lay broken, its mighty form crumpled, its single eye dark and lifeless. Batman, a dark, motionless shape on the ground, remained unmoving. "Batman?" she whispered, her voice trembling. She crawled out from behind the plinth, fear gripping her. Had he done it? Had he survived? She reached him, falling to her knees beside his still form. His suit was mangled, smoke rising from several points. His cowl was cracked, one of the crimson optical sensors dark. "Batman?" she said again, her small hand reaching out, hesitantly touching his gauntlet. It was cold, inert. Then, with a shudder, his remaining optical sensor flickered. A faint crimson glow. His chest rose and fell, slow and shallow. He was alive. Barely. "Elara." His voice was a raw whisper, barely audible, devoid of the vocoder's processed strength. It was human. Fragile. You did well." A wave of relief washed over her, mingled with a fresh surge of fear for him. But what now? More will come. There's nowhere left. Batman didn't answer immediately. He pushed himself up, slowly, painfully, leaning against the wreckage of a collapsed column. He surveyed the ruined city, The churning warp storm, the endless, desolate landscape. Kaltos was lost. The Imperium, in its rigid dogma, would condemn it to exterminatus. But Ilara was alive. "There is always a way," he finally said, his voice regaining a fraction of its former iron will. "As long as there is life, there is hope." His gaze fell upon the horizon, beyond the shattered manufactorums and the billowing smoke. In the distance, a faint, almost imperceptible shimmer. It was too far for the naked eye to see, but his damaged sensors, straining, picked up a faint energy signature, a residual warp anomaly, but one that was stabilizing. A rift closing. "The warp storm," he rasped. "It's receding, partially, a momentary lull." Ilara looked where he was looking, seeing nothing but the endless devastation. "What does that mean?" "It means," Batman said, pushing himself to his feet, a monumental effort that left him swaying. "We have a chance, a small one, to escape." He moved towards the collapsed Chaos Knight, his every step a testament to sheer willpower. He rummaged through the wreckage, his gauntleted hand still powerful enough to tear through mangled plating. He pulled out a battered, but surprisingly intact, jump pack, salvaged from the Knight's internal systems. Its thrusters were small, designed for short, powerful bursts, not sustained flight. But it was something. "This will get us clear of the city perimeter," he explained, attaching the jump pack to his own heavily damaged suit. Its black carapace contrasted sharply with the Knight's chaotic, bone-colored plating, but only for a short distance. He scanned the immediate area. The plaza was still too dangerous. More demons, attracted by the Knight's fall, would be on their way. He needed a larger, more defensible position. His eyes landed on the towering Administratum spire, still partially standing, its uppermost levels piercing the angry sky. "The spire," he muttered. "Highest point. Best vantage." Ilara looked up at the skeletal remains of the building. It seemed impossible. "How? It's too high." Batman looked at her, then back at the spire. He was broken. His suit was dying. But the mission wasn't over. Not until she was safe. "Follow me," he commanded, his voice gaining strength, drawing on reserves she couldn't comprehend. He activated his grapple gun again, aiming for a higher, more stable point on the spire. The line shot out, biting into the plasteel. With a grunt, he began his ascent, dragging his heavy, broken body upwards. Ilara watched him go, then remembered herself. She had to follow. She scrambled up the rubble, following the path he had cleared. Her small, determined form a stark contrast to the imposing figure above. The climb was agonizing. For Batman, it was a battle against his own failing body and suit. Each pull of the grapple gun sent jolts of pain through his exhausted muscles. His optical sensors flickered, his internal systems constantly warning of impending shutdown. But he pushed through it, one impossible step after another. He reached a wide, broken window on the spire's midsection and pulled himself in. Ilara, surprisingly agile, followed, using exposed rebar and broken ledges. When she reached the window, Batman was already moving, guiding her through the darkened, twisting corridors. They climbed higher and higher, using service ladders and collapsed stairwells, always ascending. Finally, they reached the uppermost levels, a vast, circular chamber that had once been the Administratum's command center. It was largely intact, shielded by heavy-duty plasteel and adamantium. A few flickering emergency lights cast long, dancing shadows. And through the panoramic windows, they saw the full, horrifying scope of Kaltos's destruction. The city was a charnel house, burning, churning with demon hordes. But in the distance, a faint glimmer of red light broke through the warp-tainted clouds. It was the Crimson Sun, now less bloated, less angry. The warp storm was indeed receding, leaving behind a scarred, dying world. "Here," Batman said, his voice barely a whisper. He moved to the central command console, its screens dark. He ripped open a panel, revealing a tangle of wires and conduits. His gauntlet's multi-tool, miraculously still functioning, whirred to life. He worked with a precision that belied his injuries, bypassing systems, rerouting power. "What are you doing?" Ilara asked, watching him. "Activating the spire's emergency beacon," he replied, his voice strained. "It's ancient, designed for planetary distress calls. Most likely useless, but it's our only chance of being noticed. By anyone. Out there." He gestured vaguely towards the stars, beyond the warp storm. A faint hum emanated from the console. A single, small screen flickered to life, showing a rudimentary signal strength meter. It was barely visible, struggling to punch through the lingering warp interference. "It's working," Alara breathed, a sliver of hope entering her voice. Batman nodded grimly. "For now." He turned to the panoramic windows, his crimson eyes scanning the horizon. The warp storm might be receding, but Kaltos was still a battleground. He needed to buy more time. He looked at the jump pack. It was designed for one adult, perhaps two small children. "Not for him and Alara." "Alara," he said, turning to her, his voice solemn. "Listen carefully. I need you to take this." He detached the jump pack, its thrusters now fully charged, and handed it to her. Her eyes widened. "But you?" "I'll draw their attention," he said, already moving towards another section of the command center, where a large, multi-barreled defense laser, usually reserved for orbital threats, lay dormant. "This spire has defenses. I can activate them. Buy you time to get clear." "No," Alara cried, tears welling in her eyes. "You can't! You're hurt! You'll die." Batman turned, his damaged cowl obscuring his expression, but his crimson eyes, burning with an almost inhuman intensity, met hers. "My purpose is to protect the innocent. You are innocent. You have a future. This city does not." He paused, a flicker of something almost human in his voice. "Find your family, Alara. When this is over, find them. Live." He moved to the defense laser, his heavy frame dragging across the floor. He began tearing at its control panel, bypassing its safety protocols, feeding it raw, unstable power from the spire's dying core. The weapon whirred, a dangerous, unstable sound. Alara clutched the jump pack. She understood. He was going to sacrifice himself again. "Wait!" she cried, remembering something. She tore off a small, almost invisible piece of fabric from her tattered shirt. She held it out to him. "Take this. For luck." Batman hesitated, then reached out, his gauntleted finger brushing hers. He took the scrap of cloth, crumpling it in his palm. It was a gesture of trust, a moment of profound, unspoken connection. "Thank you," he said, his voice rough. It was the closest thing to gratitude she had ever heard from him. Then, his eyes narrowed. "They're here," the ground shuddered. A guttural roar echoed from below, followed by the sound of tearing metal. Demons, drawn by the beacon's energy signature, were already scaling the spire. "Go, Alara," Batman commanded, his voice ringing with renewed authority. "Now!" Alara hesitated for only a second more, then nodded, a fierce determination hardening her young face. She activated the jump pack. The thrusters roared to life, a powerful blast of energy lifting her small form into the air. She flew towards the shattered panoramic window, a tiny, defiant speck against the raging sky. "Good luck, Batman," she screamed, her voice carried away by the wind. Batman watched her go, a flicker of satisfaction in his crimson eyes. Then he turned to the defense laser, its ancient mechanisms groaning under the strain. Demons burst into the command center, horrors of bone and sinew, their eyes fixed on him. He activated the laser. A blinding beam of pure energy erupted, tearing through the demons, vaporizing them in a flash of unholy light. He pivoted the weapon, sweeping it across the chamber, cutting down more foes. He was a sentinel, a guardian, buying time with every shot, every breath. The spire groaned under the assault, its ancient structure nearing collapse. Batman knew his end was coming. The demons were too numerous, his suit too damaged, the spire too unstable, but he would make them pay for every inch, every second. He fought, a storm of light and fury, holding the line against the abyss. He wasn't just fighting for Alara anymore. He was fighting for every soul lost, for every world corrupted, for every flicker of hope in this dying galaxy. He was the Dark Knight, the absolute defiance against the absolute horror. Alara flew, the jump pack straining, carrying her higher than she had ever been. She looked back, seeing the spire erupt in a blinding flash of light, followed by a thunderous explosion. The defense laser, overloaded by Batman's desperate actions, had detonated, taking a massive chunk of the spire and countless demons with it. The entire structure began to topple, slowly at first, then collapsing in a cascade of metal and fire. "Batman!" she cried, a raw, primal sound of grief and loss. She kept flying, her small form buffeted by the winds, tears streaming down her face. She flew until the spire was a distant, smoking ruin. She flew until Kaltos was a burning dot on the horizon. She flew until her jump pack sputtered, its fuel exhausted. She crashed, tumbling onto a desolate, ash-covered plain outside the city perimeter. She lay there, bruised and battered, but alive. The sky above was still angry, but the warp storm had indeed receded further. The crimson sun, though still sickly, was no longer bleeding. She pushed herself up, her body aching. She was alone, truly alone, but then she saw it. In the distance, a faint flicker of light, a spark against the desolation. Not Kaltos, not the warp, a different light, a ship, an Imperial shuttle. Its distress beacon, Batman's final act, finally reaching out. It was far away, a tiny speck, but it was coming. Elara stood there, a small, defiant figure against the endless desolation, clutching the jump pack. She had survived. Batman had saved her. He had given her a future. She would honor his sacrifice. She would find her family. She would live. As the shuttle grew closer, its searchlights cutting through the gloom, Elara looked back at the ruined city, at the smoking crater where the spire once stood. She didn't see the end of a hero. She saw the beginning of a legend, the absolute Batman, the silent guardian, the dark knight of the 41st millennium. His story was over. Hers had just begun.